I had worked hundreds of death scenes throughout my career, but this one still irritates a part of my brain I can't shut off. You see, most people think murder reveals itself in the blood, the fingerprints, the motive, but sometimes it hides in something as mundane as a toothbrush. It happened on the Upper West Side, an upscale apartment, high ceilings, marble floors. The kind of place where silence isn't peace, it's tension. Kyle Brandon, 32, software developer, found dead in his bathtub, slipped, hit his head. That's what the first responders thought. His girlfriend, Madison, said she found him like that when she came home from yoga. No sign of struggle. Water still warm. No forced entry. But something felt off. I always do a full walkthrough before anyone touches anything. While forensics focus on the blood pattern on the tub's edge, I wandered into the ensuite bathroom. His electric toothbrush was on the right side of the sink. Hers was on the left. Pink and blue. Classic. But here's the thing. In the couple's framed vacation photo above the toilet, yes, I notice everything. She's brushing her teeth in the mirror. Left hand. He's in the background. Right hand. So why were their toothbrushes reversed? Most people don't switch sides. Muscle memory is stubborn. That little inconsistency became the stone in my shoe. A whisper that said, "Look deeper." Toxicology came back. No drugs. No alcohol. Clean. But the autopsy said something the scene didn't. Kyle didn't drown. He died before his head hit the tub. Pulmonary embolism, the me said. A clot, but no history. No signs. It just didn't fit. So I went back. Madison was cooperative, a little too rehearsed. I asked if Kyle had been stressed lately. She said no. I asked to see their bedroom again. That's when I saw it. A receipt on the dresser for a second toothbrush charger, dated last week. Now I was listening more to what wasn't being said. I asked her, point blank, "Why'd you buy a second charger if the first one worked fine?" She blinked, hesitated, said something about Kyle leaving his charger at a hotel, but her eyes flinched sideways. Not fear, calculation. That's when I knew. Someone else had been staying there. I pulled security footage from the building. Madison left that morning at 8:02 a.m. Kyle was still alive. At 8:47, a man entered using a code. Not Kyle. Tall, white, late 30s. Knew the code. Never signed in. Carried a gym bag. Left at 9:21. Kyle was declared dead at 9:45. I ran the building's key code logs. That man used Madison's code. When confronted, she said it was her cousin, but the DNA on the second toothbrush didn't match Kyle. It matched the man, Chase Rutland, her ex, a personal trainer with a history of domestic disputes. Here's what we pieced together. Madison and Chase had rekindled. She wanted out of her relationship with Kyle, clean and fast. Chase knew how to trigger a pulmonary embolism using a precise trauma to the leg, an old MMA move. Subtle, effective, untraceable to the naked eye. After Kyle collapsed in the shower, Chase staged the fall, filled the tub, slid Kyle's body in, reversed the toothbrushes back to their original positions. Or so he thought. That tiny detail, the muscle memory of where someone keeps their toothbrush, unraveled everything. Madison pled out for conspiracy. Chase is now serving life without parole. And me? I still think about Kyle every time I brush my teeth. Because in the end, that simple switch, just a few inches to the left, told me the truth no one else saw. What else have we all missed? Just because it was in the wrong place. There's a sound I'll never forget. The metallic click of an ATM dispensing cash. Repetitive, emotionless, final. It was the last sound anyone ever heard from Kyle Hastings. It was a Tuesday morning when I got the call. A 36-year-old financial consultant had been reported missing. Nothing unusual on paper. Clean record, no history of mental illness. Lived in a secure complex in Jacksonville, Florida. His name was Kyle Hastings. His wife, Melissa, said he left around 6:45 a.m. to hit the gym before work. He never made it there. As a forensic investigator for nearly 2 decades, I learned to ignore the surface story and go straight to the fracture lines. People disappear for reasons that don't always fit into logic, but the evidence always whispers, if not screams. Kyle's phone pinged last at 7:08 a.m. from a location near a gas station. Surveillance footage showed him walking up to an ATM adjacent to the station, withdrawing money, looking over his shoulder once, then stepping out of frame. He didn't appear anxious, just deliberate. The odd part? Kyle had $4,300 in his checking account. He withdrew only $60. Not the behavior of someone running away. Not a desperate man. A man who planned to come back. And yet he didn't. We searched his apartment. Nothing disturbed. Gym bag by the door. His wallet was missing, but oddly, his ID and credit cards were left behind. Melissa said Kyle never took cash. He hated it. Thought it was dirty, she said, wiping tears from her cheeks. That detail stuck in my brain like a rust attack. We pulled transaction records from the ATM. The $60 withdrawal was made at 7:09 a.m. What caught my attention was a transaction that came immediately after 7:11 a.m., same ATM, different account. A name popped up, Craig McCleary. That's when my pulse kicked. Craig was a former co-worker of Kyle's at Sequoia Capital Advisors, fired 2 years prior for falsifying invoices. Rumor had it Kyle had been the one who flagged irregularities. Craig vanished from the finance world after that. When we ran Craig's record, something interesting came up. 3 weeks ago, he rented a storage unit less than 2 blocks from that gas station. We got a warrant and pried it open. The smell hit before the lock did. Inside, in a sealed drum labeled Aqua Sealant, was Kyle Hastings, wrapped in industrial plastic, a single zip tie still cutting into the skin of his neck. No signs of a struggle, no defensive wounds. Toxicology later revealed chloroform, a clean takedown, efficient, premeditated, the kind of kill you don't commit unless you've practiced it in your head or in real life. Here's what unraveled next. Craig had used a stolen ID to rent the unit, but we traced the burner phone used to make the reservation to a nearby motel. We found hair fibers matching Kyle's in the motel bathroom, and a towel still slightly damp with chloroform residue. But the real crack came from something forensic analysts almost missed. The ATM keypad had tiny smudges of grease from a substance later identified as lanolin, the kind found in certain gloves. The pattern was slightly off. Not a right-handed print like Kyle would have left, but someone guiding Kyle's hand, or forcing it. Craig had used Kyle to get money one last time. The ATM wasn't the point. It was a timestamp. He wanted to frame the timeline, to make it seem like Kyle vanished after his own decision to take out cash. A psychological cover-up. But that $60 withdrawal was his mistake. If Kyle hated cash, why would he take it out? We found Craig 2 states away, in Alabama, living under an alias. But what brought him down wasn't DNA or security footage. It was the last transaction. That $60 had been deposited into a prepaid card Kyle's wife never knew existed. A card in Craig's name. That mistake cracked the whole thing wide open. Sometimes the most insignificant action, one tap of a keypad, becomes the loudest confession. I stood in court weeks later as the verdict was read. Guilty. Life without parole. But what I remember most wasn't the case file or the arrest. It was something Melissa said to me outside the courthouse. He never even carried a wallet, she whispered. He only took it that day because his gym pass was inside. That tiny, forgettable detail, it rewrote everything. Kyle wasn't going to the gym. He was going to meet someone. And he brought the pass, so it looked like he was going to the gym. He knew. Somehow, Kyle knew he was walking into danger. But he went anyway. And that, to me, is the most haunting part. I've seen a lot in my 18 years as a forensic specialist, but few cases have haunted me quite like the one the media later dubbed the missing floor. It was a kind of investigation that made you question not just what people are capable of, but how far they'll go to hide it. It started on a Wednesday morning in downtown Chicago. I was called to a scene at the Vista Concordia, one of those luxury apartment high-rises where the front desk smells like citrus cleaner and everyone pretends not to know their neighbors. A woman had gone missing. Emily Trent, 29, marketing executive, lived alone. Her co-workers reported her absence after she missed 2 days without a call. What brought us in was more than just a welfare check. Her security fob had been used at 3:12 a.m. the night she disappeared to access the 14th floor. Now here's the problem. The building had no 14th floor. Like many superstitious structures, they'd skipped it. 13 went straight to 15 on the elevator. But the system didn't lie. Her fob activated something on the 14th. When I arrived, I didn't even know where to begin. The elevator skipped from 13 to 15, but the blueprints we requested from the city revealed a service level, unmarked and inaccessible by public elevators, between those floors. Originally designed as an HVAC maintenance level during construction, it had supposedly been sealed off years ago. But when we accessed it through a locked panel in the stairwell, we found a floor all right, dust-covered, low-lit, with concrete walls, exposed wires, and most chilling of all, a makeshift living space, a mattress, food wrappers, an old TV running static, and a wall covered in black and white photos of female tenants, including Emily. She was the latest pinned photo. A sticky note on her image read, 312 confirmed. We dusted everything for prints, but the person who'd lived there had been careful, very careful. No visible trace of blood, no signs of a struggle. It felt like we were chasing a ghost, until we found the vent shaft. Near the mattress, there was an old service vent partially covered by a metal grate, unbolted recently. Inside, wedged into the bend of the shaft, was a woman's shoe, high-end, size 7. Emily's roommate confirmed it was hers. Now, we had evidence she'd at least been down there. But how did she get in? And more importantly, who else had been using that floor? The building's maintenance logs led us to a man named Travis Holden. Independent HVAC contractor, 42, no criminal record. But here's the thing. He'd worked on the Vista Concordia system for years and had unrestricted badge access, including to sealed floors. His name never raised flags because he wasn't technically staff. When we questioned him, he was calm, too calm. Said he hadn't been there in months, though our swipe log showed his access card triggered a stairwell panel just a week prior. I asked him point blank about the mattress, the photos, the vent. He looked me in the eye and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Classic sociopath behavior. Deny, disarm, deflect. What got him wasn't the physical evidence. It was a pattern. We cross-checked tenant complaints from the last 2 years. 5 different women. All lived alone. All reported strange noises, elevator malfunctions, or feeling watched. Each one had been photographed on that wall. None of them were aware of the others. But it was a single forgotten detail that cracked him. During a second sweep, my team recovered a plastic key tag under the mattress, cracked and dirty. The barcode was faded but partially intact. With forensic enhancement, we traced it to a locker unit in a private storage facility 2 miles away. Inside the locker, clothing, surveillance photos, and video footage. Hundreds of hours of it. From inside apartments, hidden cameras, motion sensors, audio recordings. And Emily, she was on the last file. The timestamp matched her disappearance. We found her body a day later, in a drainage tunnel beneath the service level. Travis had dumped her through the vent and down into the old runoff system. The fall had broken her neck. Whether he pushed her or she tried to escape, we'll never know. Travis pled not guilty, of course. Claimed the locker was planted, that someone was framing him. But the digital evidence was airtight. Footage from his own devices put him at the scene. What stayed with me wasn't just a crime. It was the architecture of obsession. The floor wasn't missing. It was hidden, designed into the very structure of the building. And someone had used it to watch, to plan, and finally, to kill. I still ride elevators in silence sometimes, wondering how many floors we think are empty and who might be living just beneath the threshold of sight. They say the purpose of an alarm is to warn you before something bad happens. But sometimes silence is more dangerous than sound. It was a Wednesday morning when I got the call. A break-in at a private warehouse in Richmond, Virginia. The owner, Gregory Miles, a retired Navy engineer, had been running a small private security company that stored high-end surveillance equipment. Nothing appeared stolen. No forced entry. No tripped alarms. Just a curious discovery. Every single motion detector had been manually disabled. When I arrived on scene, the building looked untouched. Pristine. Clean. Too clean. Gregory met me at the front gate, visibly shaken, but trying to mask it behind military discipline. I've reviewed the logs. Nothing triggered, he said, but someone was inside. Inside, the warehouse was spotless. Shelves lined with box motion sensors, night vision cameras, signal jammers. It felt more like a spy tech exhibit than a business. That's when I noticed the clock system. Every corner had synchronized digital clocks, each blinking the exact same time down to the millisecond. Odd. Unnecessary. I asked about the clocks. Mental discipline, Gregory said. We time everything. Precision is security. But something didn't sit right. I asked to review the footage. He led me to the control room. 8 monitors, all dark. They were wiped, he said. Whoever got in knew how to bypass everything. No backup footage, no log entries, no alarm. But the server rack still hummed. Someone had been here. Someone who didn't want to be seen. Then came the detail that changed everything. On the desk beside the server, a small, clear plastic bag with one item inside, an old-school pager. It had one number stored, a burner. The number led to a woman in Baltimore, Claire Hastings, a former cybersecurity contractor. When I visited her, she wasn't surprised. She only asked one question. Was the alarm still plugged in? I nodded. Then they were already in. Claire had once worked with Gregory on a government project called Quiet Wolf, a classified early breach detection system that could predict intrusion before it happened by analyzing behavioral anomalies in real-time server data. The catch? It only worked if the attacker didn't know it was active, but Gregory had made a mistake. He had installed it and talked about it. Claire suspected someone on the inside knew about Quiet Wolf. I returned to the warehouse and took a closer look at the alarms. One wire was off by exactly 1.3 millimeters, snipped, then reinserted. A bypass done with surgical precision. Then I checked the panel logs again. The system hadn't failed. It had looped. Every minute of footage from the night of the breach had been replaced with the previous day's footage, perfectly matched to the clock's synchronization. That's why the alarms never rang. The system believed it was yesterday. What struck me wasn't the skill, but the purpose. Why break into a warehouse just to leave everything untouched? Unless the goal wasn't theft. It was to watch. I traced the power draw from the system. One subline was active even after the shutdown. Hidden feed. Following it led me to a sealed vent behind the server rack. Inside, a micro camera still recording. Whoever came in didn't come to steal. They came to install something. The footage was being sent to a remote node. Offshore IP untraceable. But it meant one thing. Gregory's system wasn't secure anymore. It was compromised from within. I confronted Gregory. He didn't deny it. He had made enemies. Years ago, he worked on surveillance systems for private prisons, including one with notorious escape that resulted in the death of a federal agent. The man's family had quietly disappeared after the trial. No one connected the dots. Until now. The breach wasn't about Gregory's warehouse. It was about him. A warning. A reminder. We can get in. Anytime. And you'll never hear us. A few days later, Gregory vanished. Not a trace. His bank account drained. His home undisturbed. No sign of a struggle. The only clue? A final message sent from that same pager. One line. Next time, you won't hear the silence. Sometimes, the loudest crime is the one that never makes a sound. And in all my years on the job, I never trusted alarms again. I've worked over 18 years examining crime scenes, blood-spattered walls, messy break-ins, the unmistakable chaos that violence leaves behind. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the sheer emptiness of the Kingsley murder. It started on a rainy Tuesday morning. I got a call from the local PD in Portland. Wealthy businessman Walter Kingsley had been found dead in his downtown penthouse. Natural causes. That's what the first responders thought. He was 58. No sign of struggle. No forced entry. And, get this, not a single drop of blood. But it wasn't natural. Not even close. When I arrived at the scene, the air was thick with sterile lemon-scented cleaning solution. His condo didn't just look clean. It looked sterilized. There was no clutter, no personal artifacts on the countertops, nothing on the floors. Just one glass of water, half full beside the bed. That's where he lay, his expression frozen in what I can only describe as faint surprise. Now, I've seen overdoses. I've seen cardiac arrests. But Kingsley didn't fit any of those molds. His lips had a subtle bluish tint, and there was something odd about his fingernails, like he clenched them tightly just before his final breath. The tox screen turned up something peculiar. Minute traces of succinylcholine, a paralytic agent. It metabolizes so quickly it's nearly impossible to detect, unless you're specifically looking for it. Most wouldn't be. But here's the twist. There was zero evidence of injection. No puncture wound. No broken skin. The man had essentially been paralyzed and suffocated, without a mark. And that's when the case turned. We reviewed building security footage. No unusual comings or goings. No masked intruders. No forced entry. Then I noticed something small, subtle. The housekeeper, a woman named Paula Martinez, left 17 minutes earlier than usual that day. 17 minutes might not seem like much, but in forensics, timing is everything. When we interviewed Paula, she seemed calm. Too calm. She'd been working for Kingsley for over 7 years. Said he was a perfectionist. Demanding. Rude. Sometimes. She claimed he was alive and well when she left. But when asked about the cleaning supplies she used, she mentioned switching brands recently. That detail got stuck in my mind. Back at the lab, we analyzed residue from supposedly organic surface spray she'd used. Guess what? It contained a microparticle delivery system, something used in advanced pharmacology. Paula hadn't just cleaned the apartment. She weaponized it. Turns out, the spray bottle contained a modified compound, succinylcholine, suspended in a volatile mist. All it took was being inhaled over time. It built up in his system, milligram by milligram, until it paralyzed his diaphragm. The man suffocated while drinking water at his bed, completely helpless. The real kicker? The delivery was so subtle that even the crime scene techs hadn't noticed the mechanism. No broken glass, no mess, no violence. We confronted Paula. At first, she denied everything, but her calm began to crack when we showed her the lab results. She confessed, but not in the way you'd expect. She claimed Kingsley had been abusing his power, degrading her, threatening her immigration status. He died like he lived, she whispered. Control taken away from him. Now, here's the part that stays with me. The murder wasn't just clean. It was calculated to look like life had simply stopped. No alarms, no panic, just a final breath, swallowed by silence. Cases like this don't make headlines. Too quiet, too technical. But they haunt you because they remind you that the most dangerous killer is the one who understands everything about you. Your habits, your health, your trust. I've seen scenes soaked in horror, but that pristine room, that untouched bed, that was the most chilling thing I've ever stepped into. And it all began with what looked like just another cleaning spray. A murder without a fingerprint. A death without a sound. The cleanest crime I ever faced.